Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the Entrepreneur Life podcast, your go-to podcast for all things entrepreneurship, accounting, and lifestyle. I am your host, Katey Maddux, founder, speaker, author, serial entrepreneur, and avid traveler. And today I have with me Lauren Lamb, my very best friend, all the way from Dallas, Texas. Lauren is an IT project manager at a Fintech company, the founder and CEO of Pure Roots interior design firm. And Lauren loves all things beauty, passion for decorating and making creative spaces aesthetically pleasing. Yes?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here for your very first podcast. It's just a huge milestone moment for me to be here with you launching this podcast. I couldn't be more grateful and excited.
I'm
so thank you for having me.
And it's so fun. I thought rather than just telling you guys who I am and kind of what's my history, I thought it'd be way more fun to have Lauren here to kind of interview me, pull out the stories we've been through, the good, the bad, the ultra crazy, and the ultra ugly. So
we've made it to the other side, and that's all that matters.
We're new people now.
It's been a journey. Absolutely.
So I'll go ahead and let you take it from here. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit nervous about where we're going, what we're going to ask, but I'm an open book.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited. Let's kick this thing off. So I guess my first question to you is, what's your story? What's your background? How did you get where you are now? Like, what's your journey been like?
Yeah, so it's been so crazy. I grew up in West Bloomfield, Michigan, and did not grow up in Miami, where I live now. And I lived there till I was 18 years old, and then immediately when I could, got out of the cold. I hate being cold.
You and me both.
And moved to Texas, where we met, to go to college. I studied fashion merchandising, and from there went to study in Italy, ended up moving to New York City to work in the fashion world, and from there decided that New York was not my spot, and moved back to Dallas, where we kind of like rejoined as friends, and was working in a corporate retailer. And thought that I had my dream job, right? I was working in a buying office. It was everything I ever wanted.
I remember.
Had an amazing salary. I was the youngest buyer in the company, actually. And then realized that it was not what I thought it was going to be. Like 70-hour work weeks, that wasn't the dream job, And so I was like, forget this, forget fashion. I'm letting that dream die. And I up and moved to South Korea and started teaching English there. And I finished my contract. I thought I'd be able to travel, while I was in Korea, but I don't know what you know about Korea, but their work ethic is so intense. They have even less vacation than we do.
Wow.
And so I ended up backpacking all of East Asia and ended up living in Vietnam, which I loved, but I got super sick there. And so I ended up moving back to the States, which was completely unplanned. I hadn't planned on moving back to the States as long as I still had visas overseas. I could live there. And so I came to stay at my parents' house after spending 3 weeks in the hospital in Vietnam. And I was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do from here. I hadn't really planned to come home. I guess I'll just go back into corporate world. And before I even came home, my mom was like, well, why don't you just come home and recover? Let's take care of your health first. And she said, I'll give you clients. My mom owns an accounting firm. She's had it my whole life. And she's like, I'll give you clients if you get QuickBooks certified. And so I actually did my QuickBooks certification while I was still in Vietnam on bed rest from having just come out of the hospital. And so all I had to do when I got home was just take an exam to get my certification. And then my mom wasn't taking on any new clients at the time. She was at full capacity. And I remember her saying, the next person that approaches me, I'm going to give them to you. And so it ended up being one of her client's friends contacted her literally the day before I moved home from overseas and was like, would you take me on as a client? And she said, no, but my daughter will. And she doesn't really have a lot of experience yet, but she'll be in my house and I'll be the one training her. It was never like she was going to get work without my mom having eyes on it first. And so I thought I'll just do this for a while until I get healthy and then can go back into corporate world. And after 6 months of doing that, I was like, why would I ever go back into corporate world, you know? And that's when you and I ended up going back overseas together to Asia and Thailand and Korea. And I was just bringing my computer, working while we were there, and just spent the next couple of years traveling around Europe, Asia, and then moved to Miami in 2018. And so now my accounting firm has been here for 4 years, but it just turned 6.
Yay. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Millennial Accounting. Just 2 weeks ago, it turned 6 years old. So that's kind of how I ended up here, the crazy roundabout way.
Yeah. You have such an incredible story. I've honestly been in awe of you for so long. Like, you are such a brave person. I remember when you moved to Korea and quit your job, and it was just so inspiring for me to see and watch. And I just love you so much. And you just have a great story. So since you've had this journey, you know, from fashion to traveling and teaching abroad, and now having your own accounting firm, let me ask you, how has becoming an entrepreneur really changed your life?
I think that kind of goes back to like corporate world, right? You're in corporate. I came out of corporate, like 70-hour work weeks, almost no vacation, zero control over your life, you know? And now I have a lifestyle firm. So it's like, I don't wrap my life around my work. I wrap my work around my life.
Sure.
And, you know, for the past couple of years, I've been struggling with an autoimmune disease that I'm, praise God, finally healing from. And before that, I had that car accident that kept me out of work for almost a year. And so being an entrepreneur, it doesn't just give you freedom from the standpoint of like, everybody's like, yeah, I want freedom, but no, actually like needed freedom, not just like I want to go paddleboarding on a Tuesday freedom, but like if I'd had a job, I would have lost it freedom. You know, I spent 3 to 4 days a week at the doctor or in the hospital, you know, or I couldn't work for months because my back was in so much pain from the car accident, or I was on 6 months of bed rest in 2020, not COVID related, just autoimmune related, you know. And so being an entrepreneur allows your business to flow with your life in whatever season you're in. Like, I know you're a mom, you know, so having your own business allows you to like work when your kids are sleeping, or work when you have time to work, and play and be with your family when you need to be with your family. And so for me, being an entrepreneur has been a way for me to stay afloat, you know, and ebb and flow with like, and my dad got cancer and I had to take a couple weeks off of work. I just couldn't even function when that first happened, you know? And so like having my assistants that were able to just keep the clients moving and keep the work going, and, you know, all the bookkeeping was still getting done even when I was out of work. And so I think that it's not just the freedom to do fun stuff, but it's actually the freedom to be able to take the time out that you need to for your health or for your family or whatever that needs to look like. It's really, it allows your business to be a lifestyle business, to ebb and flow with what you're going through.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more with what you said. You know, being out of work and still having people to support and keep it afloat. That was going to be my next question for you, was how did you manage your business while you were unable to be at 100%? Like, how do you scale? How did you manage that time when you weren't able to? I know there's a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs out there that may not have a team of people behind them. And entrepreneurship's hard, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're building the plane on the way up, as they say. So what are some of the obstacles that, you know, as you're building your plane, that you faced that, you know, could maybe help somebody else that's getting started?
I think making your offering more broad, you know, everybody's like narrow, niche. Yes, I agree with that. Like, you need to have a niche, you need to have a market, you know, but like, for example, when I was really sick, I stopped taking on clients. And so I was already teaching for CPA Academy. I was teaching classes online before COVID happened, before, you know, the whole world shut down. I already had a platform that I was teaching on about remote work, because I had come out of the corporate world and started my own thing. And that was like a big hole in the accounting world, where people who were in like big 4 firms wanting to do their own thing, but they had no idea how to do that shift. And so I already had a couple classes actually, on CPA Academy, teaching people how to make that shift. And then COVID happened. And so for me, like that blew me up online from like the accounting world perspective, because I was able to be like, okay, I'm not going to take on more clients right now because clients mean FaceTime, clients mean energy, right? But what I can do is take on more classes because I can build the content and the presentations whenever I feel well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I can schedule the presentations around like, okay, I know that in the afternoons I'm usually tired. So like when I was really sick, I was only out of bed for 2 to 3 hours a day. And it was usually between like 9 a.m. and noon. And then I'd go back to bed, you know? And so I would schedule the classes kind of around that schedule. And so it was something that I could do to make money without having to take on more clients. And so I think when it comes to like entrepreneurship is, again, you have that freedom, not just to do fun things, but to pivot.
Mm.
And so being able to pivot and be like, okay, in this season, I can't be FaceTime with people. I can't be on call to people all the time. And I even laid off my assistant for a while because I was like, I can't manage you. I'm in bed for weeks at a time, you know, and she could do the work, but at the same time, like, you're still managing people, right? You still, like,
Sure.
I still had to be on Asana and Slack at least every other day to answer her questions, or she would just kind of be stuck, you know? Whereas like teaching these classes, and then they would pay me to replay them.
Yeah.
You know, like I get paid for reruns.
That's
and
awesome.
So it was just like, how can I pivot with what I have?
Yeah.
And so it's learning how to like broaden your offering within your same skill set. I was still in the accounting world. I love being on camera and I love teaching. So that was like a skill that I already had that I learned, you know, in Korea, you know, the infamous nickname.
Katey teacher.
Katey teacher. In Korea, everybody called me Katey teacher. That was, you know, in Korea, that's your title.
I still have continued the tradition
Yeah.
of Katey teacher, and I love it.
I love it too. I love it too. So yeah, just like learning how to pivot still within, not starting something completely new,
Sure.
but
yeah.
like within your niche.
I think entrepreneurship really gives you an opportunity to think outside of the box and push the boundaries. And that's something that I really love. So I know you're a multifaceted person, and I love everything about you. So tell me kind of what you're working on now. What does the future look like for you? Is it just accounting? What spectrum are you on as far as entrepreneurship in the future?
There's so many dreams, so many visions. So from like an accounting perspective, I started speaking, what year was it? 2021, I think, was my first accounting conference that I spoke at. So, and then I spoke again in 2020 at accounting conferences. So I'm loving speaking. You know, I started speaking back in 2019. I had a really traumatic history, and I went on a mission trip to Peru and kind of got put on stage, you know, and ended up sharing kind of my healing journey. And I feel like through that experience, God was like, actually, this is your purpose. This is, you know, something that I have for you and something I want you to step into, which is speaking on stages. And so while trauma gave me a platform, it's not the only thing, the only avenue I think that I'm using to do that. So I love speaking at accounting conferences. And I just developed my first course specifically for accountants called Onboarding Clients with Excellence. And that's just kind of helping other accountants learn, okay, I started a firm. Now, how do I make this smooth? How do I make a workflow? You know, that was like the nice thing about being in corporate is there's a process for everything. There's a workflow for everything.
Yes.
Almost to a
It's
fault.
a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
For sure. Some of the processes you question, you're like, why
are we doing this? Why are we doing this?
And when you're an entrepreneur, you just change it.
Yeah.
If you don't like it.
But so many entrepreneurs don't have workflows, right?
Yeah,
They're just doing it as they go, which is great when you're in the beginning phases and when you're just learning. But if you want to scale, you need workflows. And if you want to hire, you need workflows. If you want to delegate, you need workflows. You can't give people anything that's not written down.
Can you elaborate on workflow? Like what is a workflow to you?
Yeah.
Like,
So for me, a workflow is like a consistent process that is established and written down. So like that's what my course is on. It's called Onboarding Clients with Excellence. And it's my process of taking somebody that says, hi, I'm interested in your services, to being an ongoing monthly or quarterly paid client. And so it's like, I do these 5 steps. I do it in this order. This is exactly the conversations that we're going to have. This is what I'm going to need from the client. This is what I'm going to describe to them, how my business works. And so it's like, it's the same every time. And I've been teaching that class now at accounting conferences for 2 years. And every time people come up to me and they're just like, Katey, that class was amazing. Like, that was the best class I took at this whole conference. I was honestly shocked because I'm like the newbie, right? I'm always the youngest person in the room, especially in the accounting world. I just went to a retreat a few weeks ago and I was the youngest person in the room by almost 10 years. And so I think just being able to give people the skills, you know, so I'm hoping to have more courses. I want to do one called I'm Starting a Business Now What, because I have the same conversation all the time, you know, like what entity type should I create? How should I set up my business? How should I do my finances? What do I need to be doing? And then from, you know, I'm in ministry school. So I graduated from the first program. I'm now in the second program. And in May 2023, I'm graduating from the second program of my ministry school. And so for me, like part of having a lifestyle firm, I think is being able to do like both and, right?
Mm-hmm.
So doing accounting and speaking and now a podcast and, you know, doing ministry. I'm going to Cambodia to work with human trafficking in March. So just being able to kind of do it all and figuring out like how much time do I need to delegate to each thing. So, and then I thought that the fashion dream died. I just was like, I'm just going to let that die. But I don't know why. It just keeps bubbling back up. And so maybe I'll have
It's a huge passion of yours.
It is.
Whether it's something you do for money or for pure joy.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think it's anything going to leave anytime soon.
No.
So you mentioned a little bit about your schooling.
Mm-hmm.
I know you have several different avenues of schooling you've done.
Yeah.
Do you have any formal training in accounting?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I think that a lot of people struggle with is imposter syndrome.
Totally.
So if
Yes.
you're starting a business and say you don't have a formal education, how do you break through that barrier? And are there other ways? Do you need a degree to have that validation, respect in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
or can you be self-taught?
Yeah. I think it's both and, you know, like how many people took accounting classes in college, right? If you have any sort of business degree, you took an accounting class in college. How many people actually remember what they learned in accounting class? You know what I mean? So like that's a formal training that most people are like, if I had to do accounting, I could never, you know, and they took formal training. So taking formal training doesn't make you an expert. But I think it's both and, you know, like I have formal training in fashion. Obviously, my degree is in that. I studied that at a university in Florence University of the Arts, fashion photography and fashion illustration, fashion forecasting. And then I have a certification in teaching English because I needed one to move to Korea, right? Now I have this certification degree, whatever. I don't even know what it's called, from ministry school, 4 years, almost 4 years, 3.5 years. But I think it's all about like finding coaches and then finding experience. Like I started working for my mom's accounting firm when I was 12 or 13. And my parents are both accountants and they did not believe in just handing me money. They were like, that is not the American way, right? Like we earn our money, we work hard and we're successful. And that's kind of how it works, right? Mm-hmm. And so people who want handouts, they're victims. Quit playing the victim card, you know? And so the thing at my house was like, if you want to go shopping, which is usually what I wanted money for, right?
Absolutely. That was not even planned.
If you want to go shopping, like here's a job, you know? And so my parents met in the accounting department at GM, and then my dad split off with the IT department, and my mom left and started her own accounting firm. And so I would work in my mom's accounting firm doing like data entry, very low level stuff. And then I worked for our family CPA in her tax office in high school. And that was kind of how I made money as a teenager. And so I never thought, like I hated accounting. You know, I was like, I'm just doing this so I can go to the mall with my friends, you know? And
I'm just doing this so I can travel.
Yeah.
Both high priorities on the Katey list.
Yeah, even in my 20s, for real. And so where was I going with that? Oh, making money. And so I got some experience, you know, in high school. And then my mom was like, okay, I'll give you more experience and I'll train you, but do get a certification. because at the end of the day, like, I'm going to train you on problem solving, but you still need to have like a foundation, you know? And so I actually, I'd already taken a few accounting courses, and because I have a degree in business, also a minor in business, and actually my minor's in business and entrepreneurship, and I like never pieced that together. Like my study abroad in Rwanda was with the entrepreneurship part of Baylor University, you know? And so like we were studying microfinance, and I always kind of had that seed in the back of my head, like I'm going to use this microfinance thing someday. Like I just think that's an amazing way to pull people out of poverty. But I never was like, oh, I studied microfinance and my parents are entrepreneurs, I'm going to start a business. It was like my parents have worked so much my whole life. My mom was always in her office working, and so I'm never going to start a business because I like going to work and then coming home and being home, you know, and not seeing the like constant working, you know, and having to wear all the hats. I was just like, that is not going to be my life. So anyway, going back to your question, I think it's both and. So she was like, before I give you a client, like get some formal training. And that's why she was like, do this certification, do the QuickBooks exam, you know, do some of this stuff. And then I'll help you problem solve along the way. So I would encourage people like, you know, if you're a person of excellence, it has to be both. It has to be experience, but also training. I think especially even people like in the church were like, oh, but I have the Holy Spirit, so I'm good, you know? And it's like, but the Holy Spirit loves excellence, you know? Like God is so strategic. Everything that he does is strategic, you know? And so I think as business owners that it's important that it's both, and like get a certification or take a class, like get a baseline, get a foundation, and then use your experience to build on it. You don't need like a 4-year degree, but I do think that there's definitely an improvement, or I think it's beneficial to have some sort of formal training.
Sure. Yeah. So just moving on to the next topic, what can people expect from this podcast, and like why are you starting a podcast? Why this podcast, and why now?
So crazy story. I actually got the idea for this podcast in a dream. And I was having like dream after dream after dream about podcasting. And I had just come home from an accounting, like an influencer retreat almost. It was like all expense paid. They invited us to this retreat, and it was for people who wanted to kind of go into the educator influencer role in the accounting world. And I came back from that being like, okay, like just running my business isn't enough. You know, if I want to like help people and be an educator, I need to be educating, you know? And I often feel like I'm no stranger to imposter syndrome. Like I'm teaching at these accounting conferences and I'm the youngest person in the room, or like I'm not a CPA, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm often feeling, what do I have to teach these people who've been in the industry for longer than I've been alive, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I can't teach them accounting, but I can teach them how to run a business. And that's like the people who take my courses, you know? They're like, but how do you run a business? Or how do you wear all the hats? Or how do you, and I'm like, these are the conversations that I have with new clients all the time, especially my like millennial Gen Z clients, which is most of my clients. My firm's called Millennial Accounting, right? There's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I just have a passion for helping entrepreneurs. And so I kept having these dreams about podcasting, and I woke up and I was like, God, what's with the dreams? Like back to back to back. And so I woke up at 4 a.m. one day, and I just felt like I'm supposed to start a podcast. Like that's what all the dreams mean, you know? And so I got up at 4 a.m. and my thought is always like, okay, if I feel like God has given me an idea, if I start to just run with it, if he's on it, it'll be smooth. And if he's not on it, it'll be chaotic. Not to say that there won't still be hardships or chaos, but kind of like out the gate, you know, like if doors start opening, I feel like, okay, there's like favor on this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got up at 4 a.m. and I was like, I'm just going to create the podcast. And so I just start like typing out notes of who do I like to work with? Who do I want to educate? Who do I have a passion for working with? And I was thinking, I have a passion for working with entrepreneurs. That's why I'm in accounting, is to help people with their finances so that they can have a successful business, you know? And so in that morning, in the span of like 4 hours, I wrote the intro, developed the podcast, developed the description, found the music, purchased the music, got the whole outline done. And I was just like, that was too easy, you know? And that's just not my personality, you know? I'm like such a perfectionist. So I thought, well, I guess we're going to move forward with the podcast. And so my kind of idea around the podcast is I want to help entrepreneurs who are like me, where they're just wearing so many hats and they're so busy. And like, I'm trying to scale my company. And so learning about business credit and how to get lines of credit and how to hire people and like all the things that when you're a startup, you might not need. Maybe you do. But for me, I didn't need that. I didn't need that until this year. And so now, like, I'm meeting with one of my friends who does mortgages. And I'm like, okay, I don't have a W-2 because I'm not an employee. What do I need to do to set myself up for success when I go to buy a condo or a house, And so it's like I want to bring in experts that are, like, he's an expert in mortgages, so he's going to be like, hey, there's a few different options for you. Like, do I need to set up my company as a corp? Do I need to, do these different things? And so bringing in experts that, one, have like really awesome stories to tell. Everybody loves stories. And then to kind of give entrepreneurs something like, okay, if you want to get a house, these are some things that you can consider setting yourself up with so that when you're ready to get a mortgage, you can do that even without, being a W-2. Yeah. So just adding value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's great. I mean, I'm personally, honestly, so excited to listen myself. I do have a question for you. You know me, I'm in the corporate world. You were in the corporate world. Yeah. What would you say to those people who have a burning desire in their heart to be an entrepreneur and start a business and follow their passion? How do I go from A to B, right? Like, I have a family, I have bills, and I'm limited on time, right? So my days are long, and I have to fight for that time to pour into my business and create that vision and that brand. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to somebody who is in that position?
Mm-hmm. That's so hard. Because like, I don't have kids, right? Sure. I don't have a family, don't have a house. I mean, I have an apartment that I rent, you know what I mean? But I think one big difference from being an employee and being an entrepreneur is that, like, when you're an employee, you have one job, right? That's oversimplifying, obviously. Everybody who works for a corporate company knows it's like half of your job is just appeasing the higher ups, right? So there's more than one job.
Which I'm very good at, I must
say. For real. But like, when you're an entrepreneur, you wear all the hats. Yeah. Like, you are the marketing person. You are the tech person. You are the web development person. You are, like, it's not just being the accountant, or it's not just being the project manager. Like, it's being every department of your corporate company is you, And so I think, like what you said, carving out time and really putting in intentional time. It's not going to happen by itself, of course, But then, instead of trying to learn everything yourself, that's like so millennial Gen Z, right? That we just are like, we're self-learners, we're self-taught, we use YouTube, we use Google.
Can learn anything online.
Yeah, I can learn anything online. But like, who has time for that? Unless you're literally like living in your parents' house and you just have unlimited funds and unlimited time. Like, chill with the self-learning, Like, even when I was starting the podcast, I was like, I would love to just research endlessly and figure out what's the best option and what's the best this and what's the best that. What's the best recording software? What's the best? Obviously, I had to buy all this equipment, But I was like, forget that. I know one person. She's a podcast marketing manager. I'm just going to ask for some of her time. Ready to pay her, right? We're not just like asking for people to do their business for free.
Not asking for handouts.
No, that's like one of my biggest pet peeves.
Gotta support small
support
businesses.
Support your friends. Yeah. If they have businesses, quit asking for handouts. Like, offer to support their business. That's how you can pour into them, So I was like, hey, I'm starting a podcast and I know this is your thing. So what would it cost me to hire you for like a consulting call or an hour of your time, or like, can I take you out to dinner? She's not in Miami, so it was over Zoom, but like, save yourself the time and just spend the money and find the person, and like, I have another friend she has a social media marketing company. So to do social media, hey, let me have an hour of your time. I'll pay you for it, or I'll take you to dinner, and just like, pick people's brains with your questions and quit trying to self-learn everything, because that's such a time suck. And while you can do it, it's so much faster and you'll learn so much more, because on Google, like, you don't know how much of that is true, how much is accurate, who just wrote in a Wikipedia page. Like, are they actually successful? find somebody you know that's successful and just like pay them to pick their brain.
Sure. Well, my next question is, how do you do that? How do you find that successful person? How do you find somebody, 10 steps ahead of you?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you do it,
I think so. I actually like run in a circle of entrepreneur single people who are in their 30s. That's just like my friend circle. So I have friends who are interior designers. I have friends who are fashion designers. I have friends in mortgages and real estate. And for me, that's just kind of the circle I've cultivated because that's who I like to be around, But maybe for people who don't have that, like start with Instagram, honestly, Like I've had, actually now he's one of my business partners, but I think he took one of my classes on CPA Academy and he reached out to me and he's like, hey, will you mentor me? Like, I just love what you're doing. And we just really connected. And this was like years ago. And now we're like working together, But just reach out to people and be willing to invest in them. I think that's the biggest thing. Like reaching out to somebody on Instagram and being like, hey, can you give me a handout freebie of your time? If you're reaching out to somebody valuable, their time is also valuable, and you need to honor them by honoring their time, And you can honor them by offering to take them to lunch. And I think the other thing is when you find somebody that's like a coach to you or somebody that you look up to, like for me, my coach in the accounting world, she has 2 books. She has a podcast. She's been speaking at conferences for 10 years. And she runs a successful accounting firm. So she was like a distant person. And then we ended up in the same room a couple weeks ago at this accounting influencer retreat. And I was like, will you be my mentor? And I'm offering to pay her for it, Yeah. And so find people obviously who are already successfully doing what you've done. But if it seems like those people are 10 steps ahead of you and maybe financially you can't get there, find someone who's 2 steps ahead of you. Like they don't have to be the best person. They just have to be farther than you are.
That's so good.
So reach out to a friend and take them to lunch.
That's so good. I love that. You have my wheels spinning in my head right now. I'm like going through my Rolodex of people I know that I can poke and reach out to and lean into and support each other.
Mm-hmm.
So pivoting a little, tell me a little bit about your clients and experiences there. Like, how was working with your first client and how was growing and gaining more clients? Like, have you kept all of your clients? How has that worked for you?
Yeah. My first client. So when I moved back from overseas and I had 0 experience, really. I mean, like I had some old, but she had the messiest books. Her bookkeeper, she knows I love her, so I can say this. She's still my client.
Wow, still your client?
Yeah, 6 years later, she's still my client. And her bookkeeper, accountant, had no concept of bookkeeping. Like, I think she took her, like, assistant, her VA, and she tried to make her bookkeeper, which is a super common thing in the accounting world, right? A lot of people, they're like, yeah, my mother-in-law is the bookkeeper. The mother-in-law has no idea how to do bookkeeping, and then I get hired to clean it up, That's, like, my favorite part of my job, actually, our client cleanup work. Because it's like a puzzle that I know how to solve. And so I'm like, I get to add so much value to you by solving this big mess. And my brain just works like a spreadsheet, so I like it. But
I love that so much.
My mom's like, doesn't everyone's? And I'm like, no, Mom.
Mine does.
Yeah.
Mine does, definitely.
So she took me on kind of as like a newbie. And of course, my rate was really low at the beginning because I knew it was going to take me a lot of time. And my mom was training me. But we redid her whole, like, years. We undid and redid years worth of incorrectly done accounting. And to this day, she is still one of my 2 hardest cleanup jobs I've ever done. And so I learned so much from that one client that almost everybody in comparison has been simple, because even like hard clients are nothing compared to how complex that was.
Wow.
And she lived overseas. And so I actually like went to France to visit her. And so like I like to build, relationships with my clients. So many of my clients go to VU Church, my church. And it's super fun, having clients who are also your friends, because how much more do you want people to succeed when you already love them? Like you want everybody to succeed, but
sure,
the people that you love, you know, you're like emotionally invested also in their business. But I still have a lot of my beginning clients. Some of them have turned over. I mean, some of my client work is cleanups. So it's project based, right? So I do the project and then it's over. Or I'm teaching or training, educating their current person. And then I have clients overseas, like one of my Brazilian clients. They're a company in Brazil who opened a business in the U.S. doing the same thing they do in Brazil. But they don't know American accounting practices. And so they hire me just every week. We have calls and they ask me all their questions and we redo, you know, things that are incorrectly done or any problems that they have or dealing with American banks, dealing with American payroll companies. You know, I'm just kind of their go-to person. And I love that because, you know, I love travel. So it's like having clients in different countries. I have one in the Turks and Caicos, one in France.
Love that.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. So that's like the fun part.
So pivoting something personal, you've traveled a lot. How many countries have you actually been to? Because I've lost count at this
50.
point. 50.
50.
50.
50.
That's amazing. That's mind-blowing.
We're about to be at 51. Cambodia's coming.
Woo, woo, woo. Love it.
Yeah.
So of all the 50 countries, which one's your favorite?
Stop. I know you already know the answer to this. Baby hearts.
South Korea. Love it.
But I'm biased, right? Because I lived there.
Yeah.
So that was I'd say one of the best years of my life.
Wow.
You know, it was just like, there's nothing like living abroad. You know, like I think everybody should live abroad in their lifetime. And living in Italy, for me, this is just my experience. Some people loved it. For me, living in Italy was like living in the past because I was living in Florence.
So much history.
The Renaissance,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
No electricity, no elevators. Ooh. Everything closed at 5 o'clock. Like this is so old school, you know? Yeah. Like you called the police, they didn't care, you know? And then living in Korea was like living in the future. You'd order something and 2 hours later it was on your doorstep.
And this was like years ago, you know?
Yeah.
Not now.
No, right. I lived in Korea 2015 and 2016. So like now Amazon does that starting in 2020, you know? But Korea's interesting because they have like almost like an old school mindset with a newer technology. So it's like this weird, almost like a yin yang of like both and. I love Korea so much, and the food. I love the people, and I wasn't even into K-pop, you know, or K-dramas when I went there. I'd never listened to any of that, so I learned to read and write from watching YouTube.
It's amazing. Well, switching back to business now. A question I have for you is, when you're first getting started, how do you value yourself from a pricing perspective? Like how does a new entrepreneur set their prices confidently?
Yeah. I think so much of the time we've gone through this. It's like a huge hot topic in the accounting world. I'm sure it is in other industries too, but especially in the accounting. It's like every conference you go to, they're like, switch to value pricing, switch to value pricing, switch to value pricing. And you're like, how do I do that? You know? And that's one of the classes that I've taught on CPA Academy was like, what are the logistics? How do you actually do that? And I think it comes down to like, if you're trying to compete with people on price, that's very like commodity level services, and you're only going to go so far because there's always going to be somebody who can do it cheaper. So just like let go of that, you know? Yeah. Like I know in your interior design world, like painting is one of the things that you do, but if you just did hourly painting, you know, like there's always a painting company who's going to beat you on price, you know? Sure. So like we don't want to just do hourly painting as a service. So I think starting with a baseline, and for me that looked like taking what was originally, because originally I did charge hourly when I was just learning and I had no concept of how long jobs would take. And I knew the job was going to take me longer than it would a seasoned person. My rate was low because the hours were long, right? Sure. And so then, you know, over time I raised those rates, but they were still hourly. And so when I was switching to like value billing, sometimes it seems like, oh, I couldn't possibly charge that much, or who would actually pay me that much for that, you know? And so I think a good way to kind of get over that jump is to take whatever your hourly rate is, say it's like $50 an hour, you know, and do a couple jobs at that $50 and see like how do the jobs compare to each other and how many hours did they take, right? And then take kind of an average to have like a baseline. Okay, if it took me 4 hours, that's $200. So this project is worth $200. Mind you, that's not the value billing, right? That's just a flat fee fixed price, which is different than value billing. Value billing is how people perceive the value of your goods. But sometimes it can be really hard as a new entrepreneur to be like, well, the value is $1,000, even though the work only took me 2 hours. You know, it's a mindset shift. So taking that 2 hours, okay, it's $200 if you did it hourly, and then add 20% in. For me, this is how I did it. Took my hourly rate, times it by how many hours. That was the flat fee fixed rate. And then I added 20% for margin of error, meaning maybe I underpriced it, maybe I undervalued it, maybe I had to go to the store, you know, a few times. Like in your case for interior design, for accounting, I don't go to the store.
Right.
But, you know,
except to go shopping.
Yeah, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe, you know, I did something wrong and I had to refix it or whatever, you know. So instead of going to the client and being like, hey, I need to raise your price, or, oh, I lost money on this job, add that 20%. And now you have a fixed fee that you feel comfortable with because you're like, oh, I actually know how I got to this number. I didn't just pick a number out of thin air and call it value pricing, you know? And then after you've done that a few times, you're like, okay, now I have more experience. Okay, I'm going to add another 10% or I'm going to add another 20% to cover the fact that now I'm experienced. And so it's like, if you keep doing that over time, for me, that was like a very logical, strategic way of getting to a value number, even though anyone who teaches on value pricing will be like, but that's not value pricing is. Value pricing is on the value, not on the time. You're not trading money for time. But it can just be so hard to switch that mindset overnight for like a zero baseline, you know? So that's what I recommend people start doing, is just like, just start with something. And then as you get experience, you'll feel confident adding that extra 10 or 20% because you know that you're worth more because you have experience. And then that number will gradually increase on its own.
Yeah, that's really good. And I definitely will be penciling that in for myself. So thank you for all of the pro tips.
Anytime.
Thank you for all of the pro tips. So one thing you mentioned earlier is a lifestyle firm.
Yeah.
What is a lifestyle firm?
I think a lifestyle firm is building your firm around your lifestyle. And so it's like, it goes back to that like corporate, like, do we work to live or live to work thing, you know? And especially with younger people, you know, Gen Zs and millennials, like, that was a baby boomer mindset, you know? We don't want to just work all the time, you know? And so having a lifestyle firm, for me, like when I first got sick, I felt so guilty. For about a year and a half, I felt so guilty that I was working less than 40 hours a week. And I was like, you're lazy, you're not successful, like, you're calling this a company, you barely work. You know, how can you educate people? How can you, you know, have the authority to teach on these things when you're only working 10 hours a week?
Right.
You know?
And hustle culture these days is just
culture.
daggers sometimes too. Like, how do you feel about hustle culture?
I am anti-hustle culture, but it took me getting sick and put on bed rest to break.
Were you pro?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because what I would do is I'd work 50, 60 hours a week on my business, 50, 60 hours a week. And then I would, for a couple weeks, and then I would take a month off and go backpacking, or take a month off and go to Italy or go traveling, you know? And when I was traveling, like, I'd usually work like, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours, 2 or 3 days a week, you know? But like,
it's the dream.
I didn't have bills because I lived overseas. So I didn't have an apartment. My car was already paid off. And, you know, like, my health insurance was international travel health insurance, which I don't know if you know anything about that, but it's like pennies in compared to American healthcare. So, I mean, my bills were so low. I had to work enough just to pay for my travel lifestyle, you know, like traveling full time for 4 years. And so, but when I was home, I was like, okay, I only deserve to travel because I work so hard when I'm home, you know? And then I got sick, and it was like 6 months bed rest, almost no work. And it was so the Lord, because money kept coming in. And I was literally like, God, where's this money coming from? I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing any work, you know? And it was just like such a gift that I was sustained through that. And I feel like I'm going to cry. And it was just, it was such a gift that like I had to learn, like, you are not your provider. Like Jehovah Jireh, like God is your provider. And when you're in hustle culture, you still believe that you're your provider.
It's so true.
And so when I got sick, and that was a really intense way of me learning that like God is my provider. Like he says work, he says reap what you sow. So it's not like be lazy, you know. It's still work. Like we were created for work. It says even in heaven people are going to work, you know. So it's not like be lazy and sit around and do nothing, but it's not working for the purpose of surviving, you know. It's working because we feel fulfilled as humans when we work. And because that's how we were designed.
If you're not growing, you're dying, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like we live for the purpose of that because it fulfills the way that we are, but we're not striving, we're not hustling, just, you know. So it's like a balance.
Sure.
Because it's also not work 20 hours a week and do nothing. Your business will not grow that way. You know, I had already built up my business for almost 5 years when we got to this point. So it's not like I was doing that at the beginning. It got to a point where I was so sick, I had to coast. And I had relied on all the things that I had built, you know. But it's this like balance of working hard and being strategic with your time, but also like resting when your body says rest. The whole reason my body stopped functioning is because I didn't stop.
Yeah.
You know.
So what are some practical ways? I know you mentioned working like 60 hours a week, you know, going full speed ahead, pivoted, health issues, had to go on bed rest. What are some practical ways, like if you do experience, you know, something from left field that keeps you from going forward, how do you sustain? Like I know obviously the Lord is your provider, but are there any practical tips that you learned to work less but make more, grow?
Are you talking like financially?
I think from you know, a workload perspective.
Okay.
And also financially, how do you grow? How do you get more time freedom and financial growth simultaneously?
I think outsourcing is your best friend. Like at the beginning you wear all the hats because you have time and not money.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you're starting a business, unless somebody invested in you and you have capital, you have time but no money.
Sure.
And then as you start to grow, you have money but no time. And so it's like, I think when that shift happens, that's when it's time to outsource, you know. And it's like, how are you going to outsource? Like it doesn't have to look like hiring a full-time employee. You know, they say like keep the things that you love and get rid of the things that you hate, you know.
It's good.
And for me, I hate web development. I hate working on my website. Like I can learn tech. I'm an intelligent human. I can learn tech. That's like a declarative statement for myself, you know. But I hate it. Not technology, but like I hate trying to figure out why the boxes of my website don't go in the order that I want them in and why there have to be spacers on site. Like I hate that, you know. So the first thing that I'm outsourcing was outsourcing for my new company. I'm outsourcing more than I am for Millennial Accounting. But like one of the first things that I hired was somebody that can do marketing, tech, and podcast production, you know, like they are creating the course portal for my new course. Like I just hate doing that stuff and it's so time consuming for me because it's not my genius zone. Outsource, like get it off your plate. And then what do you love that you want to keep? But then, so at first it's like, okay, what do you love? What do you hate? Take the easy stuff, take it off. But then as you scale, the higher up you go in leadership and the more people who are under you and the more responsibility that you have to start to give away things that you love. I love doing social media, but I won't be able to do it forever. You know, at some point I'll have to have a social media marketing person.
Sure.
Because for the last
Those
year.
reels take so long. Like anyone who hates on an influencer, like y'all have never made a reel.
Honestly.
And I said y'all because I'm from Texas. So
my social media has been slacking for like a year. I used to be so good at it. And then
consistency.
It was just, I don't have the bandwidth or the energy. And especially when I was sick, it was like my creative juices just turned off.
Sure.
When you're stressed, creating is like the hardest thing. You can do the work, but you can't create or have vision or, you know, do all of that. And so I didn't hire it out. I just stopped doing it. And so,
Mm.
of course, like I lost followers and, the social media kind of took a dive. But such is life. That was a season, and that's part of it. Like sometimes part of your business is you can't scale everything at the same time, and it was like, what do I need to scale? I need somebody to help me with accounting work. I need somebody to help me develop my new website. I needed somebody to make my speaker reel. I don't necessarily need to have reels on Instagram, although at some point I'll need to go back to doing that. Right now I'm just, making reels of my closet and my travels.
Which we're all here for. Please continue. We like the sequins. We like the fur. We like your monthly subscriptions. So please continue for all of the people that love you.
Yes, I will.
So as we wrap this up, what can people look forward to on this podcast? Where can they find you?
So we will be on all the major podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If I'm being honest, I don't even know what they all are. I'm just paying somebody to put them on there.
Outsourcing.
Outsourcing at its finest.
Walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. You do what you got to do.
Yeah.
I'm on Instagram, Katey Maddux, Katey, as you know.
Maddux.
Amen.
Not
yes,
O.
That's right. For this podcast, I think it'll just be guests. Occasionally, we'll talk about me or do some stories or have people interview me. Maybe we'll do one about travel stories just because they're fun and crazy.
That scares me a little.
Selective travel stories.
Selective. We'll be very selective with that. Yes.
We're not those people anymore.
No.
We're in our 30s
grown
now.
adults.
We're grown women.
Yes. Most of the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But it'll be mostly like me interviewing different entrepreneurs in different spaces, both teaching on entrepreneurship, like what entity type should you do? What are the things to consider when you need to build business credit? Because as an entrepreneur, you need business credit. Or things, maybe we'll do one on accounting. I'm sure we'll do some on accounting. That's like
yes, please.
My world,
Yes.
How not to commingle your accounts, what kind of accounts to use, what's the best bank for business banking, where it's going to sync to your QuickBooks seamlessly, and you can have an accountant user that logs into your bank read-only so they don't need your bank password. Things like that. And then lifestyle, I think will be more like travel, setting boundaries, how do you integrate business and personal kind of a thing. So it'll just be me interviewing different people who are SMEs, subject matter experts, corporate term. I haven't used it in a long time.
I still use it on the regular.
Yeah. So that's what we're doing. And you can find me at kateymaddux.com or MA QuickBooks if you're looking for bookkeeping and accounting services. And yeah, all social media platforms. We're on them all.
We love it.
Yeah.
We're here for it. I know I personally am so excited for this podcast. I am just dabbling in the entrepreneur field and getting my feet wet. So I know a lot of the content that you're going to provide and produce and create are all the things and all the questions that I have now. So I just want to say thank you for listening and following that and taking action and not just, having the faith that it's going to come to you, but really taking that step. And I mean, look at us. We're here.
Yeah.
It was maybe a month ago that you were blowing up my phone about this dream about a podcast, and
not even a month ago. It was a couple weeks ago.
I remember, and I'm like working, and it's like bling, 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 bling. Like, call
what
me back.
What do you think about this?
And so it's just a little surreal to even be sitting here right now with you doing this.
In Miami, you flew across the country for this.
Miami.
Let's go.
Yes. I would fly anywhere in the world for you, Katey. I hope you know that.
Girl.
Let's add
Don't
it all
tease
to
me
the
with
list.
a good time.
So just want to say thank you because you're going to help so many people through this.
Thanks.
So we're
so
looking forward to it.
Love you. Yeah. And I think that's it. I think that's it for the first episode.
Yeah.
I want to thank you guys all for joining. It's been so fun. We are so excited for everything that's to come. So thanks for joining the very first episode of the Entrepreneur Life podcast. And today is a great day to start a business.
Yeah.
We did it. We did it. Let's go. Only took 12 hours.
I need a sandwich and sushi and a martini.